These days, I would expect you all to be ready to sing. When this many people get together, you wouldn't be seated, you'd be singing. But I'm not going to put you through that this morning, because it's too early for that. And you took a chance on cold brew, so... All right, here we go. The last time I gave a talk was in 2008. It was in Houston. It was 2 hours, and I started it off with giving the audience shots of tequila, because I think that that's an appropriate way to get started. And I ended off with giving everybody pie. And in between, we watched television shows that I've made and films that I've made and talked about process and talked about all kinds of things. And it actually was in a very similar space down in Houston. We don't have that much time. It's cold brew. And so I'm just going to get right to it, and hopefully you guys will stick around. All right, so you can really break the world down into two types of people: those who don't mind going through customs, and those who do. I fall into the camp of those who have a real problem with customs, and it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be just garden variety authority issues. It could be the idea that someone could just grab you and for no reason take you and throw you in a room, take away your phone, take away your raw milk cheese. Like, for whatever it is, I feel that's going to happen. I generally feel guilty about things I haven't done, or I might not. I feel guilty about everything most of the time, and all that comes to light when I'm going through customs. I feel like suddenly I'm a drug trafficker, and I've got all kinds of cocaine that suddenly appeared in my bag. But that's not the worst of it. The worst part so I always get sweaty, I always get nervous, but the worst part of customs is that part, because just by that description, you can imagine what I look like going through customs. I look really like I'm about to commit a crime. And also my name is a little bit strange, and sometimes I just don't look so well put together. And so they always ask that question, like, so what do you do? And I find that to be more stressful than anything else. I'm not sure about you guys. And like when I was younger, I got "What are you?" because people were confused by my name and the way I looked. But the other thing was "What do you do?" And I like to give full answers. But when you go to customs, you know that you're only supposed to give like the shortest. You just be like just monotone, be monosyllabic, and just get through it, right? So, but then I always slightly pause, and then I say, "TV producer." And then the air kind of clears, because they know what TV is. They might not know what a TV producer is, but instantly it's familiar. It's a legit job. It's something that, regardless of the fact that very few people know what a producer is, they can say, "Oh yeah, any shows that I know?" I'm like, "Nah, probably not." But it kind of loosens things up, and so I get through. But I kind of want to tell them more about myself. A human being, you want to share. And if I was to answer the question truthfully, I'd say, well, I've made some short films. I've worked in PR. I've been the artistic director of a small film festival in town, Real Asian Film Festival. What have I done? I was in a band. I've been the host of a game show, a CBC game show called Smart Ask. That was on many years ago with my brother, and that was the third season. That's with Sabrina Jalise, who's now a really successful comedian in her own right. I would tell them that I've been the host of a late night arts entertainment show that was started around the same time as Smart Ask, around 2002, 2003, also with my brother, and we got to do amazing things like create games like Sushi Roulette, which I can explain in greater detail, but not right now. I got to deliver the news a la Naked News style. I'm not sure if that would get me through customs or not. I did some arts reporting on play and got to dress up like Cheech and Chong with my brother and go to hemp farms. I got to be a drug-dealing brother, again with my brother, on Trailer Park Boys, and in season 5 and in the movies, as well as got to learn how to shoot a semi-automatic weapon, which I don't know. It freaked me out to shoot a weapon. My brother really got into it, which freaked me out even more. I've also, and then back to, yes, I am a television producer, and I have co-created shows and done things. At this point, the customs office is really like, why did I ask the question? And then with the same guys, Micah Donovan and Christopher Martin, been on a U.S. travel series for Discovery Science called Invention Nation, where we traveled the country and tried to figure out what America was doing to green the country. And more recently, Acquire Leader. And so, I've done all these things, and they all relate to each other, and I'll sort of go through it a little bit today. I have to cherry pick a little bit, but all the images that I've shown you so far, they all have a relationship to each other, and they wouldn't have happened without the other. And it's only now that I can kind of look back and see how, by taking a chance on one thing, or I was able to move to the next thing. And even though there was no strategy involved in it, it was trust, trust of my decisions and my instincts, and following, I guess in some ways, my dreams of making art. But really what it has to do with is about community, because I think that if you look at all of my work, it's really all about being part of a really exciting, energetic, diverse community. And for me, that started in Halifax. And then if I was also able to, because my answer in terms of what I do is so long-winded and potentially super boring, it's probably better if I just call myself this, which is just professional amateur. Or you could do this, I was gonna go back and forth. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. Let me see. So that's really what I am, and I think that you're a professional amateur. To be a professional amateur, you basically have to either be super ignorant or fearless, however you look at it, and just dive into a situation no matter what. And so, I'm trying to go through this stuff a little bit quickly because we've got a lot to talk about. But I grew up actually just around the corner from here, and now I live just around the corner from here. And Toronto in the 70s, a pretty incredible place, but a place that provided all the entertainment for you. So you could go to, there's so many venues, you could go to theaters, you could go to movies, so many movie theaters, you could go to whatever you wanted to do, you could see, and to this day it's very similar like that. But then I moved to Halifax in the early 90s, and at a seminal time when a lot of attention was being paid to specifically Halifax and the pop explosion, and the band Sloan kind of like blew it wide open, and suddenly major labels were all over the town and trying to sign the next big act. And I became involved with the radio station CKDU, and was given an opportunity to have an all-night radio program from 2 in the morning till 8 in the morning. And like that is pretty much, like that's just a whole lot of candy to give to somebody, and where you can just go and you can try things and you can experiment and you can fail and fail and fail. You can have dead air for 15 minutes and not even know it. And then look back and go, oh, that was not so good. But then you learn from it. Then you think, oh, maybe dead air is kind of an expression of something. And you just go back and it's just that you can do anything you wanted to do. And Halifax was that. Halifax was a smaller version, like just a tiny little town. I mean, it's compared to Toronto, it's really, really small. And it didn't have the venues. It didn't have as many movie theaters. Eventually, by the time I left, it didn't even have a rep cinema. Things were closing down all the time. Venues were closing. There were all these bands, but there weren't many places for bands to play. And so I quickly went from being kind of like a voyeur arts consumer to somebody who started getting really involved in making sure that these things happened. Because if we didn't do it, nobody would. So if I guess I'll skip sort of forward to the time where towards the later 90s, we started, my friends and I started a rehearsal space. and it was just down the hill from the cop shop. And, but people didn't care because it was in the north end of Halifax, and we could make all the noise we wanted to. Sometimes the cops would just come in while we were practicing at 3 in the morning, and we'd be like, oh, sorry, we're making noise. They're like, oh, no, we just wanted to sit in, which was amazing. But we had to create the venue. And then once we created the venue, then we had to actually start the band. And then, 1 week we would have 3 songs, and then the band I was in, Rick of the Skins, I showed a poster of it earlier. The week after that, we'd had 6 songs, and then 9 songs, and all originals. And we all kind of knew how to play music, but we didn't really know. Only one member of our band at the time, Michael LeBlanc, really had been in a bona fide band in Moncton. My friend Victoria Kent and I, we didn't know how to be in a band, have that attitude. You can take lessons, but you need to do it to really understand it. And we started playing, and we started getting attention, and then we ended up opening for our heroes, Sloan in Halifax, and then we recorded an album, and then we did a little tour. And that was happening all over the city, and it was really inspiring because I'd come back to Toronto and people were like, what are you doing in Halifax? Like, what's the point? And I said, you really have to come out, because what we're doing is we're building a scene, and we're not just, no, that's a bit self-righteous, but it's, we were contributing to a scene and making it happen. Years later, people like Joel Plaskett are, he's like an amazing professional touring musician. And I mean, even back then, that guy was, all those guys in Thrush Hermit were ridiculously talented and already on a major label, just barely out of high school. Sloan continues to play today, and the scene in Halifax, whenever I go back, I'm always so inspired because it's still happening. And all these communities are happening at the same time, even though you don't know that they're happening. Toronto, in my opinion, back in the 80s was a terrible time for music, and that was where, Toronto was where the industry center was for music. But it wasn't really good, I thought. And Halifax is where it was happening, and Vancouver was where it was happening. But then I started to realize that it was starting to happen in Toronto, for me anyway. And a chance encounter over dinner, you just hang out with the right people, and more opportunities became available. And there was a film festival in Toronto called the Splice This Super 8 Film Festival. It's where Hidden Cameras played their first show. And I happened to have dinner with one of the organizers, Kelly O'Brien, and she suggested that I make a short film. And that's when things started happening, because I had never made a film before. I made it for less than $200, and I, in the end, made about 5 of them. But it's because of those films, when I moved back to Toronto, that it allowed me to get on Zed, because the producers saw, they saw the one film I made called I Pie, a Love Story. I made it with my brother. And they were looking for hosts at the time. And a friend of mine was a producer on the show. And so we just, out of the blue, made a demo tape, us just for 2 hours talking to the camera, and I edited it down. And the next month, we're now on national television. And it just happened like that. And it's just because one friend said, hey, make a film, made a couple more, submitted it to the CBC, they bought it, it ended up in the hands of this executive producer. This woman happened to be in the room who knew me, told me I should be a host, called my brother, found somebody to shoot the thing, and then ended up getting on the show. And then because of that, we got Smart Ask, and it's just, I think it's sort of back to either ignorance or fearlessness. It's just doing it and trusting your instincts and trusting that something good will come out of it. So what I didn't realize at the time was that everything that was happening in Halifax was sort of a breeding ground for what would become Food Jammers. Food Jammers is a Food Network Canada television show that I co-created with my friends Micah Donovan and Christopher Martin back in 2003 or 2004. And I think that it's, in some ways, my whole life is like it's a bit of a dream, because I don't know if I'd be able to write the strategy. It's like, my strategy is not to have a strategy, and it's just to follow. I've already said this before, but it's really just to do what you love and do it with people who you love to be around. And that I've had too many positive experiences doing things with no agenda that have become my life and have become the things that have allowed me to buy bread or anything, just put a roof over my head. So these things have been endorsed, and so maybe I live in a bit of a dream world, and I can talk about how when that dream world kind of crashed down a little bit, when reality came in, but when you're on a roll and you surround yourself with these people and create this community, really nothing, in my opinion, nothing will go wrong, because if you're making things for the right reason, then everything will be okay. And that's what Food Jammers was. Micah was DJing in a bar in the East End, and the bar owner's wife happened to be a sort of fledgling television producer, and she said, oh, we're pitching some shows to the Food Network, do you have any ideas? And Micah said that the problem he had with food shows in general was that at the beginning of every show, they would say, today on whatever it is, we're going to be making, I don't know, lasagna. And at the end of the show, guess what? They made lasagna, right? And isn't that great? I mean, you set up an expectation, you follow through on it, everyone's happy, no one gets hurt, it's great. Maybe some hijinks in the kitchen, I don't know. But he thought that was boring, and we thought that was boring. And so we decided that we would make a show where we would say that we would make something, but we would have no idea if we'd be able to make it. We would try to, we all come from, Christopher Martin, Micah Donovan, myself, we all come from sort of this middle-class backgrounds where of a slightly different time. Our parents had sort of high-end tastes, and we were subject to all these amazing experiences, but then you leave the nest and you realize that cheese is very expensive, right? and that everything is very, very expensive in the world. And that, and then within the Halifax community, you learn how to make the most out of nothing, and that's sort of the best thing. Like, you all know that when you put on major restrictions on projects of yours, when you work within those sort of confined areas, if you don't do that, it's kind of sprawling. When you tell yourself that you only have $200 to make a film, it's amazing what you can do. And with Food Jammers, people used to ask us about the props, and I'll get into all that stuff a little bit later, if they still existed. It's like, no, we had to recycle the wood, to make the next thing for the next episode. So, but all that time, Micah was also in Halifax at the time, in the later 90s, and he was also throwing parties. And I think that what we realized was that every moment in life is like an opportunity to kind of open a door for somebody. And whenever we have parties, we want to open the door, open many doors for people to experience something incredible. So parties were never just, come over and open some wine or whatever. It was always something more. And all of our friends would be involved in decorating the parties or creating experiences within the parties that would make them, like, in some ways we kind of intellectualized parties to the point where, we really justified the existence of having a party because it was really furthering our character development, And I think that a lot of the things that I do are like that, because why shouldn't life be like constantly fun? This idea of work being something that you do just because you have to do it, to me is a drag, and I realize that I'm really lucky because I've been able to do all these things I like, but now I don't want to do anything else. I just want to have fun, fun. But it's like, as long as there's a common goal, and we would have the same common goal towards a party as we would to making an album, to making a film, and then now with Food Jammers, making a television show. And I should mention right now that Micah and Chris hated television. Like, they don't like television. Everything about it is so many things about television is false. I mean, we are going through this golden age of television where it's like cinematic values are coming to TV, and there's a lot of good things that are happening in television, but there's this whole other underclass of television. I was a copywriter for a very large production company here, and I would have to wake up at 6 in the morning and watch murder shows and write up the synopsis for the networks, and I was like, man, can't believe I don't have a show right now, and this is what's getting made. It's like a sausage factory. It's crazy what gets made. But so we wanted to bring all of our community to this show, and we wanted to make a show that people would that would be made, that would be distributed like zines, you know? It would just be like, but it would be on the network. And I think that this is something that's really great about when I look back on the things that I've done, is that I've been able to go into these mainstream sort of broadcasting worlds, and in some ways, I don't really think about it in this way when I'm doing it, but in a way, with the values that we bring into it, we're attacking the system, we're infiltrating the system. And that's why I was temporarily worried about selling out when we were about to, my brother and I were trying to decide whether to do Smartass, the game show. And then I realized that this idea of selling out is to me was kind of meaningless. You know, I come from a theater background, and I love theater, but making one show, even if it's Canadian television, which the numbers are not very high, you're still reaching like 200,000 eyeballs at the time, and that was really exhilarating. So, Food Jammers, community, bringing people together. One good example, I'm just going to show a clip here of the opening done by local artist Seth Scriver. And the amazing thing is that with a television show, they usually, like this type of show, they want to show people's faces, the host's faces. Hey, it looks like you could trust that guy. Like he's on a skateboard. Like, it's great. Like, look at the way he holds the spatula. I'd trust that guy to flip my egg. You know, like it's so boring, right? And why does everything have to be so boring all the time? It's because people want to just like ride the line. They don't want to like mess with the system. They don't want anybody to be jarred. But we were like all about making sure that things were going to be weird. And one of those things was inviting Seth Scriver to do the opening, which was a huge ordeal. We had to do a whole presentation on why. We had to do frames. We had to like, it was ridiculous. So I'm going to show this to you. So that we made some compromises. We didn't want to be in it, but we said, okay, animated versions of ourselves is okay. A network executive said that carrot looks like a cock, so that can't be in there. And we're like, come on. Ever seen Porky's? Come on, relax. All right, so obviously I'm a bit long-winded, so things have been, I have to sort of start to wrap up, but this is the show. This is Food Jammers, and this is the way we mess with the system. And this is the way we were adamant about getting great music on our show. Over the course of 3 seasons plus a holiday special, we got over 300 songs, and by artists ranging from Stereolab to the Deadly Snakes to Sloan to just like it goes on and on and on. Music we loved, and it was such a joy to do it. And one way we got all of these people to give us music for relatively no money is we said, in one episode, we're going to make a fruit leather jacket. And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. So that's a fruit leather jacket. We wanted to have fun. It's taking this idea of the party to a whole other level. This is a hot tub shabu shabu. So it's responding to nature, responding to the Canadian winter, but like we all go inside and we're hermits for the length of the winter, and we come out looking all gnarly. And so wouldn't it be great to be outside? So here's a hot tub where you can go in, and then there's a separate chamber inside for you to make the hot tub. So you're in the hot tub eating shabu shabu, which is a hot pot. And like we did it when it was minus 17 out. It was crazy. Deconstructing the things that are right in front of you that you buy all the time. Gum. You know, the first people to chew gum were really desperate for something to chew. It really doesn't taste all that great, but we made our own, which is great. And messing with the rituals and holidays. This is they asked us for a holiday special. They really wanted a Christmas special. We're like, we're not making a Christmas special. Are you kidding me? So we came up with a day called Hol Log Day, and we identified the problem of holidays is that there's usually one person who always is running back and forth to the kitchen. Like if there was like paint on the ground, you'd see like just this one line, and that's not fair. So we decided to make a roller coaster so the food came to you. Being random. So important to be random and allow chance to take over your life. And I'm not sure if you guys make curry or Indian food of any kind, but chances are you're making the same thing all the time unless you're dedicating 5 hours a day to doing it. And so we created like a carnivalesque randomizer, sort of like going to Disney World, going to the X, and on each one of those wheels are different ingredients. And so each time, if you wanted to make curry, you would just randomize it all. The idea that we're all lazy, but we're not all really all that lazy, this idea that slackers aren't slackers really when it comes down to it. But we, instead of having to like make sauerkraut by actually stomping, The cabbage, we just made a leg. The idea of our environment and the fact that challenging yourselves to reduce your footprint and cooking with zero emissions, which we did at 401 Richmond, and those mirrors that we got from Active Surplus almost burned down. We were doing a test with a piece of paper and it lit on fire. It's like, imagine if we burned down 401 Richmond. Like, that'd be like, you would have to leave the country, the worst thing ever. A gyroscopic chicken, this is at the beginning of the ultimate, the clip I just showed you, and baking on the lake. All about experiences, all about 15-foot-long sausage that Christopher made, and visualizing our concepts and making each one an event, making your life an event every time, seeing things visually, something that I had not done before in a way, and it totally changed my life. Promo shots, forget the regular promo shots, make donuts out of inner tubes, and end up on the New York Times front page of the dining section, you know? So it's like all these things that seem ridiculous. I'm a champion of the ridiculous. I think that it's really important to go that route. I think it's important to come up with really stupid ideas. One of the most stupid ideas I've ever come up with for a television show is called Mutter, Wutter, Cutter. And like, you know, when you're in the business of television, you're always trying to come up with new shows. But you kind of need to go like sideways sometimes. I would love to live in a world where I could make a show called Mutter, Wutter, Cutter. Can anybody guess what it is? So you teach a dog how to speak English. That's the first half of the show. Or any language. We speak English or French, whatever. I don't care. And then once the dog knows how to speak the language, then you ask it what kind of haircut it wants, and then you give it the haircut it wants. I don't know if it'll ever get made, but I hold it in my heart. Another one is because the Food Network has gotten so ridiculous. It's just. I don't know about you guys. I mean, the food porn, sure, I love it all, but I don't need to see another person cry in the kitchen, personally. Like, you know, is a show that my brother and I came up with called Food Fight, and where you're in a cafeteria, there's a kitchen on one side, kitchen on the other, and my brother and I would just throw food at each other, and there'd be diners in the middle, and whatever food fell on the table would be what you ate that day. And okay, stupid idea, would never go, maybe good for a Portlandia sketch or something like that. But I was once in a meeting with Food Network executives, and I was so high on caffeine. I'm in New York, and I'm like, I'm gonna get a show. And like, I ran through different ideas, and it wasn't quite working out for me. I could see them kind of like just glazing over. The ideas were too weird. So I said, fuck it, I'm gonna go really weird. And I said, okay, there's no way you can say no to this idea. And then I pitched Food Fight, and the meeting was over. Okay, so I probably should wrap up fairly soon. I got about 5 minutes left. This is a picture from the very first night of Choir, Choir, Choir. This was in February 2nd, 2011. Choir, 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 if you don't know about it, is a weekly singing event in Toronto that I co-started with my friend David Goldman. It was something that happened, it also, for me, comes out of Halifax. It's about communal, it's about hanging out, music, making your own entertainment, singing together, and doing it with no agenda whatsoever. So when a couple years previous, my friend Amanda, who's right over here, her and I got asked to put together a choir for a friend's birthday. It was a surprise 40th. And then she invited David to come along, and there we are in my kitchen. Again, I don't know how to conduct. We don't know how to conduct. We don't know anything about choir. I've never been in a choir. This is ridiculous. But we did it, and it was people loved it because people love singing. I didn't realize just how much people love singing. And then of course, like with any great idea, we did nothing with it. You know, everyone's like, when are we going to do choir again? And we never did it again. We didn't do it again until I joined Facebook and thought, okay, well, why don't we try this? And the very first night we did it, iMagazine called us up and said, we want to come and photograph what you're doing. And we're like, we have no idea what we're doing. Like, what are you talking about? Toronto has to be more interesting than you guys coming out to take a photo of what we're doing. So again, friends, just trusting us to put on something fun. We met in a real estate office on Queen, Bosley Real Estate. We stumbled through it. At the end of it, we said, okay, well, maybe we'll do this next month. And people were like, let's do it tomorrow. And since then, we've been doing it every single week. We added a second night. Now, upwards of 120 people show up on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And we were recently at the TEDx performance at Kerner Hall. David and I crowdsourced a choir for Tegan and Sarah and appeared on the Juno Awards in April, which was an extraordinary experience. We actually had a choreographer. It's like, it was amazing. I love choreographers. And the Strombo show, George Strombo was tonight, and the Polaris Awards, singing Tegan and Sarah. This is a little gift. This is what we look like when we move. And also we did a thing with kids, choir minor. The thing is that it's just, for me, it's about creating a space to do it. And again, I'll just sort of say it again and again and again, but having no agenda. I feel like these days, it's like our agendas are just like, you see the agenda coming a mile away all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're a really strategic person and you know exactly what you want and you want to get it a very specific way, I all the power to you. And I think that I wish in some ways I was more like that. But I also like this idea of sitting back and letting it happen and letting yourself be influenced by other people's ideas. Even though the tagline for choir is not a democracy, we still do listen to people. But I think there's a mixture between listening to people but also having a strong idea of what you want. The great thing about Food Jammers was that try to be a control freak and work within basically an artistic environment. We completely changed the way that television was made for us at the time. It was not normal. The call sheet on our second day of shooting was arrive, leave, and in the middle was build, right? And things would change all the time, and with choir, things change all the time. Arrangements change on the fly. But people feel comfortable when you create this space to come in and do what you're good at, when you're invited to do what you're good at. And I feel like we should all be there to support each other in being able to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. And then a lot of it is just, for me, it's been timing, and a lot of great things have worked out for me because it's been the right time. And a lot of things have not worked out for me. After I finished Food Jammers and a couple other shows, I pretended that I was still a TV producer, because I was going through customs and I was telling them I'm a TV producer. And I was acting as if I still was getting paid as a TV producer. But I wasn't, which is a huge mistake, But when you let yourself dive into these systems and you let yourself and you do things that you don't know how to do, it completely changes. I never used to draw, but because of Food Jammers and because of making plans and making everything a poster or an event to try to visualize what we're going to do, I had to wrestle with perspective and I started drawing and it was amazing. And then I started building, and now I build home projects and put my own flooring in with the help of a friend I'd love to be an industrial furniture designer. And I think that, it's possible. I mean, it's totally possible if I think probably have to be way more strategic. But this shot here, if it all leads to this. If you follow your dreams, you will end up eating popsicles with David Suzuki. The CBC is definitely in the shitter now. I mean, CBC is kind of like the Argentinian economy. It's always, it's a cycle of every 10 or 11 years. It always goes down in some way. Right now, it seems that it's going down even further. What this is a still from a pilot that my brother and I made called Shooting Stars back in 2007. And it started off really innocently. It was, CBC used to do this thing, and I'm not sure how much they do this anymore. As the public broadcaster, I think it's their job to help. I mean, it's a great training ground through radio, television. People are learning like crazy there, and they get benefits if they're full-time. It's fantastic. And there was a time when you would see so many people giving opportunities. They would never necessarily see the light of day, but we got to executive produce, write, star, in this show, and it started off with going into the archives and just trying to repurpose the CBC archive. And then it just grew from there because we had this great relationship with the executive producer. And so we created a show within a show, and David Suzuki, it's his first ever dramatic role, ever. And that's what that's what I would hope that while, with the whole thing about agendas and the whole thing about branding and the whole thing about like the way that the media works these days is that there's less and less space for people to experiment, and no wonder people are leaving Toronto. It's too expensive, and it's Micah was saying the other day that Toronto's becoming very predatory and that it's no place for hippies, and like think what you will about hippies, but it's nice to have a few hippies around, you know what I mean? And like it's just good for just the equilibrium. And so I think that when there's fewer hippies around, there's less opportunities to experiment. There's less like it's just like this whole trickle down effect. And then the CBC is not if the CBC is not around, and if they're not giving people like just little pockets of money to experiment and try things and fail and fail and fail and fail. And this never saw the light of day. If you want to see it, you can contact me. But when everything's working, you get to try things and you get to build on them and have popsicles with David Suzuki. So thank you very much.